name for the camera?
it sounds like I'm about to be like arrested. Richard Fiore.
Okay. And is it okay if we film this?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're over 18. What kind of video is this?
How is all art and music classes important or not important to you? Well, just students.
And I think if we think of art classes kind of in a much broader sense, for grade schools, high schools, middle schools, and college, I'm going to take college out of the group because we're obviously at an art school, so obviously I think it's very important. From a personal point of view, when I was in grade school, the only class I could excel in was art, and it made the school I was going to way much more fun, and you could use art as a way to branch into other things, mostly science, dealing with the science of color, science of light, science of structure, and things like that. So I think having art is a way of getting a good group of people involved in other portions of education. So I think for me, it was the catalyst for everything else.
Could taking art classes away affect the students' creativity?
Yeah. The benefit of art classes is the structure of the project limitations and the time and money, basically, if you want to think of it in kind of those terms. Unlimited time and unlimited money, okay, that's great, that's not realistic, but having a class that says you have 1 week to do a painting, you only have a week, so how are you going to spend your time doing it? And I think that's much more useful to a student in real life, because real life isn't, you don't have unlimited time, unlimited time and unlimited funds. So I think I think that part is key.
What do you think schools would do to replace art and music classes? Like,
what could they do, or what should they do?
What could they do? I mean, because if they're taking away classes, they have to fill that time up with something else.
Right. I mean, the schools are probably going to fill with what's called Common Core, I think, now. And the idea that it's math, science, and I think they also got STEM. Common Core is the group, and then STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And they're pushing that really hard because everyone's afraid that China and India is going to take over. And I think what everyone seems to forget is that America's really good at being creative. And I think the reason we're so good at creativity is that the way we learn is through creativity, is through experimentation. A friend who's from China, and when he went to school, his schooling was memorization. It's rote memorization. He came to America to go to college, and he couldn't function because there were so many gray areas. I think Americans are really good at gray areas. That's what we do. There's no right or wrong answer. There's this kind of general consensus or general idea of what to do. And I think art prepares you for that. And when you take that away, they're going to replace it with science and technology, which I like science and technology, and I understand the importance of it. But I think without the creativity, that all you really have is a robot without a soul. And that's really what sells is the soul aspect of it.
How is art and music different from other subjects like math and science and history?
I think there's a lot of similarities to it. Math and music obviously has a connection, and I think just general science and any type of color theory art or anything that has a huge thing. You're asking what's the difference, or what?
What's the difference between those, if there is a difference?
Science seems to have a right and wrong answer. Art doesn't. Art is that shade of gray that's I prefer, I guess. When you have science and math, while it's needed, the fact that there is a right or wrong answer does make it easier to measure. How do you grade art? How do you grade emotion? How do you grade, was that the right shade of blue or the wrong shade of blue or the right tone or the right whatever? It's subjective in a way, and you can't across the board set up a nation that says we are X, Y, Z if you can't measure it. And the only thing you can measure is science and math, and things like that are, you can color in a bubble and say yes you're right or yes you're wrong. you can't do that with what shade of blue. It doesn't really work. So,
Exactly.
I think that's the.
Do you think art and music help students express themselves?
I think it was the only thing that helped me express myself when I was a kid. Could have been the school I went to, could have been the situation I grew up in. Having a rougher childhood with a home life that was kind of goofy, I could kind of jump into art, and for me it was film. At the time it was film and visual effects, animation, and I just jumped into it, and it was a way to escape current situation, to realize there's something better and cooler out there that you could create yourself. I think that's a very important aspect of this, which seems to get glossed over, is that it's an escape, I think, that's needed for people. And you take that out, it seems like a soulless society at that point. So.
Okay. How would you feel if art and music was taken out of the school district or out of the school?
I've always worried about it because everyone's cutting back. I think what would happen, I mean, I would hate it, obviously. I think what would happen, at least I think from my point of view, I would probably donate my time. At least where my son goes to school. They do some great art projects, but if that was cut out, I think I would do one of those, like, I'd be, when I was a kid, it was called Picture Lady, who came in and talked about a picture. But I think I would do that, or I would donate my time and energy, maybe for an after-school thing, to say, hey, let's try making a film, or this is how animation works, or let's do claymation or something, just to get them thinking outside of just the general rote memorization. And what is not to slam Common Core or any of the stuff that they're currently doing in schools, because I think there's a lot of good stuff happening in schools. And I would say just my view of grade schools from when I was a kid, there's a 40-year difference between me and my son. So in 40 years, he has a heck of a lot better second grade than I ever had. They do a heck of a lot more than I ever did. So it is improving, and so, without knowing exactly what's happening, I just think if they cut out art and music, you're going to cut out 25% of those kids are just going to tune out. So.
How did you feel about art classes when you were a kid?
Well, it was the only part I looked forward to. After a certain age, all you're doing is gluing macaroni onto stuff to make for your mom. It's really. But when I got to the point where I would say middle school, where I was successful in painting, then you could kind of hang your hat on that. If you weren't into sports and you weren't into whatever it was to be into, I could hang my hat on art, and it was something that became easier for me. All through high school, it was the same thing. It was the one thing that you could constantly take art classes, and that was kind of nice. And, I got a scholarship for painting and stuff, and that's what I did. I was first a painter. I think for me, it was the only way I got through school. And obviously to the point where that's all I studied outside of it. I think it's the question was, what's my...
How did you feel about it when you were in class?
I disagreed with my art teachers all the time. And I always thought I was right. And it's really funny, because when I talk to my old art teachers, for them to find out I'm an art teacher seems very funny to them, because of much of a pain in the ass as I was. But I was constantly challenging, like, I don't think we have to do it that way. We can do it bigger. We can do it this. I was constantly trying to change how it was done. And it was really, it's just kind of funny that I've now turned into what they are. And hopefully, the thing I think about when I teach is letting the student do what they feel is right, because it's not about me. It's about them doing it. So I've taking all the art classes I've done and teaching all the art classes, that's kind of how I feel on that, is that art class is really just a structure that we're making to force you to do things you don't necessarily want to do all the time with limitations. And I think that's key. So I enjoy art classes. I still take them. I still do online stuff. So you never stop. Just always do it.
Okay. What or who inspired you to become an artist?
My dad can paint, and so he taught me my first how to draw, which was an X-Wing fighter. Remember the first thing I learned how to draw was an X-Wing fighter. My dad showed me how to do it, perspective and everything, and I was such a dork. In '76, I was 10 years old, so it's like, that's the optimum time to start drawing this. So I just doubled down on that. So I got into that. There's a gentleman there's Sid Mead, who designed most of Blade Runner, and there's Ralph McQuarrie, I always pronounce his name wrong, Ralph McQuarrie, who died not too long ago. But he designed a lot of Star Wars. So I got really into production design of films and started that. So I would say it was Sid Mead and Ralph McQuarrie. Joe Johnston is another one. And those three guys, Joe Johnston's still around, he still directs. He was like a youngster when he was starting to create all this stuff. Those guys, Ron Cobb, I'm sorry, I'm just throwing out names, but Ron Cobb was another one. Those guys totally made me become an artist because I realized there's a job where you make monsters, and it just seemed like a bizarre thing. When I eventually went into the world of video games, all that stuff kind of came back, which was kind of nice because previous to that, when I was doing television, there's no reason to design monsters. There's no reason to kind of think through that process. So those guys kind of helped me, almost career-wise, move into video games and then kind of around from there.
Okay, this is our last question. Who is your favorite artist and why? If you have one.
Ryan Church. Ryan Church is what I would want to be if I was a painter. I love his work. He's designed most of the Hollywood blockbusters. He's designed most of the Star Wars films. Young guy, and the thing I like about him is that he uses weird programs and he doesn't worry about the tech. Like, he's not this tech geek who worries about pixel size or anything. Well, make it big enough. Make it look good. And I kind of like that where you're focused on the art and not focused on technology, because we can all be pixel peepers and look at technology. We all do it. We all get geeked out. But Ryan Church is definitely one guy who goes in there and just goes, I'm making cool stuff for the right reason. So I would say he's my guy at this point. So.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been fun.